You're listening to The Real Short Box, a comic book podcast made for geeks by geeks.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the most righteous podcast on the internet, The Real Short Box. My name is Kevin.
I'm Donald.
I'm Jared.
Today is a very special podcast. We have decided to do Marvel Comics history.
It's a big one, folks. It's a big goddamn bucket of history.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
We're kind of a big deal
It's
now.
kind of a big deal, yeah.
You can't do Marvel Comics history in one part, fellas, can we not?
No.
We can't do it justice in two parts.
No.
Nor three.
Nope.
No four.
No.
I mean, I would have thought 4, maybe, but 5 is good.
Five is good.
Maybe 6.
Yeah.
Heck, maybe 6.
17 parts. We're
Mhm.
going to pull down the pants of Marvel and expose their bare buttocks to
That's
the
right.
world.
You will never look at Stan Lee's ass the same after this.
I've never thought about his ass until now. So
And now
thank you.
you're thinking of it because it's like, hey, don't think about the
Yeah.
pink elephant.
Yes, he's a virtuous man that's done nothing wrong. I
That's
forgot.
right.
I believe so. I've met him on several occasions. He was a very fine gentleman.
How
Yeah,
much did it cost you to meet him?
$7,500.
That's besides the point. folks. That's besides the point. The fact of the matter is, when you are around such greatness, such illumination coming from him,
Yeah.
emanating from his...
Okay. So we can't get to Marvel Comics before we talk about something else. Am I correct?
Yes, today's episode, part 1, is about the golden age of Marvel. Now, for obvious reasons, for some of you who know and some of you who don't know, it wasn't called Marvel Comics back then. It was called Timely Comics.
Right. Marvel Comics was a Silver Age company, if I recall.
Yes, it would later become a Silver Age company.
Yeah.
Though we do get Marvel Comics, as it was called, a book called Marvel Comics,
Yes.
during this time when it was still under Timely?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How weird.
Yep.
Well, it kind of makes sense. I mean, the way they were going for was like the Marvel Comics, Marvel at,
Right.
this great mystery, or Marvel Mysteries, Marvel at this. That's kind of what they were going for at the time. It's the 1940s. You have that kind of talk, like, that kind
Everybody was Edward G. Robinson.
of. It was Edward G. Robinson.
Yeah, I'm gonna go take a piss. Yeah, all right, honey. Yeah. Why are we talking like this at the dinner table? Because it's golden age.
But anyway, fellas, it all started with the pulp magazine publisher named Martin Goodman in 1939. He decided to jump into comics after being like I said, publishing pulp magazines.
Right.
One of them was on Kazar, who would later be in the X-Men.
The Savage Kazar.
Yeah, the
was it?
Savage Kazar.
Yeah.
It was a
With
pulp magazine, Kazar.
Zabu. his
Yeah, he was a timely
syndicate.
character.
That's crazy, and
Mhm.
still around to this day.
Still
I
around
believe,
to this
you know?
day.
Yes.
Over 80 years old.
Can't afford Kazar.
Nobody can afford Kazar. Yeah. Oh, and by the way,
If you can find it.
we
yeah.
do many prospecting episodes. You're not getting any of these books unless you're Nicolas Cage.
Or you have a great-grandfather who saved everything over the last 80 years.
yeah,
Right.
It happens.
Yeah, not to me.
not to me.
Search and you shall find.
Yep.
But published in October 1939, the very first book was Marvel Comics #1. And 2 very famous characters debuted.
I remember on the cover at least the Human Torch, if I recall.
Yes, and let's be very specific, the android Human Torch.
Right.
Yes, that's right. Now, and who was on the forefront of the cover was Namor the Submariner.
That is correct.
Or Namor, however you want to say
Say
it.
what to call
I
it.
like Namor.
Yeah. Now, Namor, I'm gonna take a little bit of the baton right here. What I did is I actually wanted to cover some of the big 3 here.
Sure.
Now, when I say the big 3 for the Golden Age,
The
that
Black
would
Knight.
be the Black Knight.
Yeah.
What was his name? Jap kicking. What was it? Some World War II guy. There's a lot of really horribly named World War
Oh,
II.
you mean Jap Buster Johnson?
Jap Buster Johnson and Fu Manchu. No, none of those characters. I'm talking about, first up, Submariner. Now, this character, first off, I want to say a recorrection. We talked about the Submariner a long time ago, and we mentioned that his first appearance was in Marvel Comics #1.
Yes.
And then we went back and said, oh no, we were wrong, because we did some research and we found out that it was actually in Motion Picture Funnies Weekly,
Mhm.
which is technically his first appearance. But those were never released to the public.
Only at a movie theater, if I recall.
They were only in a movie theater, and they were only given to.
Good luck getting those.
Oh, they found him. I think. Well, I'm going to talk about Mr. Bill Everett, his creator. I think when he died, they found some copies of it. I'm sure those are like in the comic Smithsonian or whatever. But and even Marvel Comics #1. If I could have one comic at the top of my list, it would be that.
Even a second printing.
Even a second print.
Now, if I may add real quick, there were 80,000 copies sold of the first print.
That's a lot.
That was a lot for them.
Yeah.
And then the second print, they did 800,000 copies.
Jesus.
Now, I didn't know back then that they had second printings in the Golden Age. I was not aware of that. I figured out once it was done, that was done. Because they're only sold at, the news, I think of New York, where I'm from originally, like the New York newsstands, the guys giving the newspapers, you get a little comic here, and that's it.
Well, because I think it was because this was at the dawn of comics becoming not mainstream, but as mainstream as they were going to be at that time. So that was actually like, well, let's keep selling this one until we can just get more going.
It was an escapism thing, I think, because of the wars that was going on around the world.
Oh my God! Everybody was bitching and moaning about the war and the depression.
Hey.
Jesus, get over it!
Hey, for 10 cents, you get to escape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, Golden Age, Namor the Submariner first appeared in April 1939. And this is what we're talking about, in the prototype for a planned giveaway comic titled Motion Pictures Funnies Weekly. This was produced by comic book packager Funnies Incorporated. The only 8 known samples among those created to send to theater owners were discovered in the estate of the deceased publisher in 1974. So that's where they are. When the giveaway idea fell through, creator Bill Everett, and I want to talk about Bill Everett a little bit after this because he's an interesting young man, he used the character for Marvel Comics #1. So that is his first public appearance because there's no way you're getting those motion pictures funnies. Well, I mean, like you're getting that Marvel Comics #1. Yeah, right, anyway. Now, this was the first comic book by Funnies Incorporated client Timely Comics, the predecessor of Marvel Comics. The final panel of the earlier unpublished 8-page Submariner story had included a continued next week box that reappeared sans lettering in an expanded 12-page story. The series Marvel Comics was retitled Marvel Mystery Comics with issue #2. So right off the bat, they switched the titles, which is happening a lot with this early Golden Age stuff, as we'll talk about. A lot of titles switching, a lot of just constantly trying to change stuff. Now, Namor is really, he's very interesting because he was actually the first anti-hero. He was the first, and I love me some anti-heroes. Namor was my first anti-hero that I really latched onto.
Didn't play by the rules.
He's got little wings on his legs. What a sissy.
And he's got that, it's the cock of the eyebrow. It's the cock of the eyebrow.
It is.
I don't know what.
I'll forgive the wings on the legs.
I don't know what it was. Just the arrogance and the super strength and the backing it up. In his first appearance, Namor was an enemy of the United States. So that's exactly it. So that's pretty ballsy shit at that time. You're going to put a character out as your lead character and he's not friendly with the U.S.
True.
When this was all about the United States being some cool ass shit. His name came from Bill Everett trying to come up with some cool ideas as far as he was trying to come up with interesting names that sounded like powerful dictators. So one of those was, he was looking at Caesar, he's looking at stuff. Roman spelled backwards is Namor.
Makes sense. Very clever.
And now I want to talk a little bit about Bill Everett. This guy, he was a comic book writer, artist, best known for creating Namor the Submariner. And he would later go on, and we'll talk about this when we get to the Silver Age. He was a co-creator of a very famous Netflix character named Daredevil.
Ooh.
So this guy had some staying power. And this was something I did not know at all. I thought it was really cool. He was a descendant of the poet William Blake, like hugely famous poet in history.
What did William Blake do?
What was it? Leaves of Grass, I believe, was his big.
That sounds boring.
Oh well, I mean, you take him or you leave it. But Mr. Everett was pretty much another one of these kids who kind of fell into comics. He was another guy who wasn't really like searching for comics. I think he came from a pretty well-to-do family and became an alcoholic at a young age, so that'll do you good. And he died actually pretty young. I think he died in his 50s or 60s.
Oh.
But age 55 in 1973.
Oh no.
But he was doing comics straight, the whole time with that. So Namor the Submariner, to me, what a ballsy first character to kind of start out with as your superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pass it back to Kevin. I'm sure I'll get into some others.
Well, I'm glad you bring it up. Since you mentioned 2 of the big 3 original Timely Comics character, I'm going to mention the third. One that is very famous, one who is a leader of the Avengers, and that is Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought you were going with the Black Knight.
No, I'm sorry.
He did lead the Avengers, by the way.
No.
Man, this guy loves the Black Knight.
Good
I
old
do.
Steve Rogers. Now, interestingly enough, Captain America was one of the very first comics of a superhero to actually have a comic under his own name.
First appearance was Captain America.
Because if you think about it,
#1,
Action Comics, Superman, Detective Comics, Batman.
True. That's very true.
Yeah, Timely Comics, they didn't give a shit. They'll say, hey, let's give him his own title. Let's back this character up.
Wasn't that Simonson that was co-creator?
It was Joe Simon.
Joe Simon
and
Simon.
Jack,
Oh.
and Jack
the
Kirby.
King Kirby.
Why did I say Simonson?
Yes, the issue went on sale in December 1940, although it's dated March 1941. And let me tell you something, fellas, this was a blockbuster hit. That first issue sold 1 million copies.
Was he punching out Hitler on the first issue?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was
That's
about to.
why.
I was about to get to that.
Punching Nazis.
This is before the United States even got involved in World War II.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, really?
This is before Pearl Harbor. Remember, December 1940. This is exactly 1 year before Pearl Harbor even happens.
Am I correct in assuming that Joe Simon was of Jewish
Heritage?
heritage? Yes.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. So it would make it more understandable that before the U.S. got into the war, that someone of Jewish heritage would put something like that on a book, especially on a front cover,
Mhm.
considering
What was going on?
the things that were taking place at the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes complete sense.
Now, in 1940, writer Joe Simon, as we were just talking about, conceived the idea for Captain America and made a sketch of the character in costume. He said, quote, I wrote the name Super American. Not that Captain America, I guess, is really that much different.
Right.
At the bottom of the page. Simon said in his autobiography and then considered, quote, no, it didn't work. There were too many supers around. I could think of one. Captain America had a good sound to it. There weren't a lot of captains in comics. It was as easy as that. The boy companion was simply named Bucky,
Yeah.
after my friend Bucky Pearson, a star on our high school basketball team.
Interesting.
I like that shit.
Let me just interject real quick.
sure.
I just want to say one thing. Speaking of supers,
Mhm.
I don't think Superman would be anything without Clark Kent.
Oh, for sure.
There's no Superman.
That was the
without
only
a Clark
humanity
Kent.
you had
Yeah.
without him just being...
He's basically just a god figure, you know. if
Yeah.
he
I
didn't
don't
have
think
that.
anybody would have cared.
Right.
Mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent. You know what I mean? Like, they always had to have some type of tie. Steve Rogers was a very American boy or man.
that you can relate to.
Right, that wasn't strong, that
Right.
went through, because of his patriotism, went through a process to become stronger so he could help fight the
And
Nazis
serve his country.
and
Right.
serve his country.
Right.
Very patriotic, very understandable for that time.
And a guy, yeah, exactly. A guy who felt weaker but wanted to fight anyway and found a way.
Right, and I can also understand why this character fell by the wayside after the war.
Oh, completely.
Because there was no war, there
No
was
more
no
Nazis to
It
punch.
was over.
the patriotism wasn't as strong, so you didn't have a need, sadly, for Captain America in comics.
And I think people in the public didn't want to revisit it at that point.
Yeah,
It was
for
like,
obvious
we
reasons.
just
Yeah.
finished this horrible world
Right,
war.
for obvious reasons. Yeah, like 300,000 Americans
Right.
lost. You're trying to kind of just move on.
Because I don't know if you know, but World War I, the war to end all wars, that was a kind of shitty sell when you got World War II coming right after that.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
true.
So they're
Yeah.
probably like, yeah, let's just not keep talking about
When
this
you
shit.
think about World War One, you know,
It was also known as the Great War.
the ramifications of that are not nearly as, if you think about it, as severe as World War Two.
Oh,
World
of
War
course.
Two was like, let's just pretend World War One didn't happen. This is so much worse.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It was like it was like creating something and then creating something that just overshadows it completely.
Oh, especially when you ask. I mean, the other day we saw Wonder Woman.
Yes.
And we were talking to I was talking to my daughters about World War One, and they asked me about it. And I said, I don't know a whole lot about World War One. And we
I
started
do.
to research
Yeah,
it.
it was the assassination of who was it?
Ferdinand.
Of-
The Archduke of Ferdinand.
Ferdinand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Austrian Hungarian
Yes.
Empire.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. That's
So
what
people-
sparked that.
And also you
Know your
had
history.
all these different empires at the time that literally collapsed after World War One.
Yeah, they don't even exist anymore.
And another thing that people don't understand is about World War One. Some of the problems that we have today in different parts of the world, from the Middle East to Africa to Asia, stems from World War One because they were former colonies, and then things just weren't resolved properly. Because you remember when they invaded these different lands, they just carved up and just called this land whatever, Iran, Iraq, wherever the case may be. When maybe,
And are things going on over in those places?
from when I read, yes.
I don't read. So I guess that's what we learned here today, people. We all should read more, or at least learn how. Now, it's getting back to Captain America Comics #1, the we were just talking about this. The cover dated March 1941 and on sale December 20th, 1940, a year before the attack at Pearl Harbor. But a full year into World War II showed the protagonist punching Nazi leader Adolf Hitler. It sold nearly 1 million copies, and while most readers responded favorably to the comic, some took objection. Simon noted, quote, when the first
Nazis.
There was a Nazi contingent in America at the time. They were very supportive.
Well, some people didn't know
there
what
still is, but yeah, I believe
Matter of
that.
fact, very famous, Charles Lindbergh was a sympathizer.
And then like they hinted that Walt Disney was even a sympathizer.
Well, listen to
around
this.
that time.
Oh, yeah,
It's
I've heard a lot
crazy.
of
Down the rabbit hole we go.
Well, that is a whole another, yeah. So Simon said, quote, when the first issue came out, we got a lot of threatening letters and hate mail. Some people really opposed what Cap stood for. The threats, which included menacing groups of people loitering out on the street outside of the offices, proved so serious that police protection was posted with New York Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia Airport,
That's right,
personally contacting Simon and Kirby to give his support. So good for him. So yeah, that's an interesting thing, is at this point in the war, people didn't know how heinous and fucked up this Adolf Hitler kid was,
right,
and what he would go on to do.
And it's also interesting how important the Jewish community was to the comic book community.
Yes.
Because if I don't know necessarily that the Jewish community would have felt the need to speak out in any way and manner that they could without being persecuted as greatly as they were.
Right.
If that makes sense. And I don't mean to dismiss it or make it any less, but I'm saying that Simon and even Shuster and Siegel and these guys created these characters to speak out against what was taking place in society. Comic books, guys, and we all know this, but maybe not everybody listening to this, comic books are extremely political. If it wasn't for the things taking place in modern times, and yes, that was the modern time, we wouldn't have a lot of the characters that we have now.
You're absolutely right. And matter of fact, that's why I wanted to break these up into different ages, because they all reflect the politics and the social changes going on during each of those eras.
Yeah,
Well, what did we
complete
have
sense.
that was in the comic book news recently with that X-Men Gold cover? There was supposed to be like religious innuendo about. I think I'm totally just paraphrasing, but I think the artist put some kind of imagery in the background on purpose for himself that had to do with, I think, conflicts in the Middle East and stuff like that, and it was immediately pulled because it was so controversial.
Upsetting people.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Bucky, his sidekick, Captain America and Bucky, they face Nazis, Japanese, and other threats to wartime America and the Allies. Stanley Lieber, now better known as Stan Lee,
Yep.
contributed to the character in issue number 3 in the filler text story Captain America Foils the Traitor's Revenge, which introduced the character's use of his shield as a returning throwing weapon. Captain America soon became Timely's...
Was the shield still that kind of
the like
The
triangular
flag,
one?
the flag.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that
I don't
would
think
return?
it became... And I think, it was the returning throwing weapon. So it had the boomerang qualities of back then, too.
Interesting.
Because it would have been shitty for an artist to have to try him picking it up every time. This sucks.
Yeah.
So Captain America soon became Timely's most popular character and even had a fan club called the Sentinels of Liberty.
Oh, there you go.
I would have called them the Patriots, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Now, interestingly enough, I didn't know this until I did some research, is that Kirby and Simon only participated in creating the first 10 issues.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that was because they found out that Martin Goodman, the publisher, was screwing them over. When they made their deal, they were supposed to get a fair share of the royalties, 15 and 10%. And what happened was they found out that a lot of the money was just going towards, other things within the company itself. They weren't getting their fair share. Because Captain America was pretty much the bread and butter for Timely Comics at the time.
I believe it.
And Simon was getting paid.
You know what wasn't the bread and butter?
What?
Let me just interject here real quick
Okay,
and
go
mention And I'm going to do this throughout the podcast, by the way. I'm going to mention a couple failed timely
by all
characters.
means, there's
plenty.
plethora
I'm
of
just
them.
I'm just going to mention two real quick. That was not the bread and butter of timely comics. One being the Black Widow, believe it or not. There were two Black Widows. The first one did not take. This was created in 1940, this character. Mystic Comics number 4. Medium, and here's her name. Clairvoyant.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I get it.
Waka waka.
I get this.
Medium Clairvoyant is murdered and descends into hell. Satan turns her into the Black Widow to hasten his domain, evil souls that walk the earth, which you think would be a little counterproductive. She can kill by touch and has other various abilities as the case may be. So the Black Widow being able to kill by touch, that's kind of cool. I get it. Just the character didn't last.
Right.
Another one that I love is Blaze the Wonder Collie.
Is that a dog?
Yes, 1949, Blaze the Wonder Collie number 2. By the way, there was no issue number 1.
Uh-huh.
This is an interesting
How
fact.
fucking
How do you do that?
It was titled something else.
Which is what I was just saying
Happens a
about
lot.
the Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics number 1 was Marvel Comics. The second one had a different
Marvel
Yep.
Mysteries.
Blaze is your standard heroic, intelligent animal. In his first adventure, he's kidnapped and sold to the Canine Corps, meets up with Dr. Glenn Forrest in Europe and becomes a war hero, and finally reunited with Judy Stanton back in the States. In the following issue, he's still adventuring with Forrest, though. So those are just two real quick, failed, timely comic characters, and like I said, I will interject as we go along.
Okay. Right. Now, getting back to the treatment of Simon and Kirby,
Mm-hmm.
they were getting paid $75 and $85 a week.
Woo,
So-
that's a lot of money back then, right?
It was a good salary back then. Now, here's the best part. National Comics, which would later merge with All American Comics and become DC Comics, offered them $500 a week combined salary to come on over.
Oh,
Once they learn, hey, you're not being appreciated over there, come over here, we'll take care of you.
Right.
So what ended up happening was they secretly were planning to leave and not tell Goodman, but then Goodman somehow found out about it, and they made sure that they finished
Stan Lee.
issue number 10. And yes, we can't prove it, but it got around that they were leaving. At the time, Stan Lee was like 19 years old, probably trying to, get
Hungry
in with
son of a bitch.
get in with the boss. Hey,
Mr. Goodman, can I have a minute? Yeah. Word around the office is these two guys are flying the coop, and I thought maybe I could jimmy my way in and take over some of the writing gigs. What do you say, pal? Is all squarey pants?
Excelsior.
Excelsior! Sounds good, Lee.
now we can't prove it, but it's implied that perhaps, Mr. Lee may have sold them down the river, but we don't know for sure. Can't prove it.
We don't know.
But nevertheless, they finished the 10th issue, and then they went on their way to help out DC Comics. And Al Avison,
Who gave them a hell of a wage in comparison.
yeah, absolutely, heck, who wouldn't take that?
Mm-hmm.
Especially for 1941 money, heck, you go and do that right away.
Shit, that's more than what I made in my first job.
I know. Isn't that
Washing
sad?
dishes,
Your golden age money was way better than my fucking modern
Guys,
day
I
money.
made $4.35 an hour
Jesus Christ.
when
That's
I
your first
first
job?
started. This is
Wow.
Ohio wages, gentlemen.
Wow, I thought I had it bad in New York. I was making $5 an hour.
Nope, $4.35 an hour.
Oh my goodness.
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
and I was miserable.
Understandable, sir, but at least you came out a great cook.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, everyone. Just wanted to mention real quick about a shop in Canoga Park, California called Spiro's Heroes. Elliot, the proprietor of the store, has over 300,000 books in what's called the Temple of Comics. That's Spiro Heroes in Canoga Park, spirosheroes.com.
But after Kirby and Simon left, Sid Shores and Al Avison took over the book and continued on for Captain America.
Good old Cap. And I also do want to. I don't want to gloss over the Human Torch. Now, yes, everybody, when you say the Human Torch, they think the Fantastic
Johnny
Four,
Storm.
Johnny Storm. Now, this Human Torch, also known as Jim Hammond, was known as the Android Human Torch. He was actually an android created by scientist Phineas Horton. He possessed the ability to surround himself with fire and control flames. In his earliest appearances, he was portrayed as a science fiction monstrosity, but quickly became a hero and adopted a secret identity as a police officer, Jim Hammond, for the New York City Police Department. He was created by Mr. Carl Burgos, And he first appeared as well in Marvel Comics #1 with Submariner. So
He was on the cover though, right?
I think they both... No. Namor was on the cover of Marvel Comics #1. I'm pretty sure. Human Torch was on #2 when they changed it to Marvel Mystery.
Oh, okay.
And that issue is... or not that issue so much, but so following his debut in the hit Marvel Comics #1, the Human Torch proved popular enough that he soon became one of the first superheroes to headline his own solo title. Through the 1940s, the Torch starred or was featured in Marvel Mystery Comics.
They didn't call him the Human Torch, though, right?
No,
the
then
Torch.
the Human Torch, premiering with issue #2.
It's so weird.
Yep. And having taken over, this is what was really weird. In fall 1940, he took over the numbering of the defunct Red Raven comics. So they just their numbering is so goddamn confusing, and then they change the name and keep the numbering, change the numbering. Now, this is what was cool, too. So now we had Namor was the first anti-hero in comics.
Uh-huh.
Seeing a natural fire and water theme, Timely was responsible for comic books' first major crossover with a 2-issue battle between the Human Torch and the Submariner that spanned Marvel Mystery Comics #8 through 9, telling the same story from the two characters' different perspectives. That's pretty fucking cool, right?
That is really cool.
Yeah, so that was the very first comic book crossover. Human Torch, the Android, and Submariner. I think that's some really cool shit. And Marvel Mystery Comics, just so you know, ended in its run with issue #92, which was in June 1949. And the Human Torch was #35, also in 1949, but in March. And those three characters, why I talk about Cap, Submariner, and the Human Torch, in different, obviously, facets and different, popularity, all still are around to this day.
Right. In this order, Cap, most popular, Namor second, Human Torch
Right.
third, dead last.
Dead last.
Couldn't be more
way
dead
at
last.
the bottom.
And
But-
that's only because they created another Human Torch.
Right.
So you couldn't, it was like, well, we can't have two Human Torches. So
Right.
they kind of waylaid him by the sidelines, unfortunately.
Right. And I remember bringing him back. They brought him back in a West Coast Avengers story, which was really awesome. And now I recently read him in that IVX story. He's on the side of the Inhumans for some reason.
Interesting. Because
Yeah.
he's an android. He doesn't know any better.
Exactly. I don't know. Terrigen mutant. I'll join you, Medusa.
Yeah. You got pretty hair.
Yeah, you've got great hair.
I can't grow hair. I'm joining your side.
And that Black Bolt, he's a strong silent type, like guys I used to know back in the Golden Age.
Right.
All right, Jesus.
God damn it.
Jim.
Speaking of the Golden Age, let me mention just a few more shitbirds.
And it's funny you mentioned it because unfortunately, for the most part, this is as good as it gets for as far as superheroes during the Golden Age
Because
for
they
Marvel.
blew up and then crashed.
And then crashed.
Yep.
And it really didn't have anything.
They were like, let's throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. Nothing stuck, guys.
No.
And to be honest with you, when I just mentioned about Simon and Kirby leaving, this is what they get because they went on to DC, well, what would later become DC, to create characters over there that would help sustain DC through the rest of the
Now,
Golden Age. and
Kirby
through the Silver
did
Age.
come back.
Yeah, he came back much later.
Right.
And if
With a
anything,
vengeance.
he probably
He
you could
did.
say saved their ass for the end of the Silver Age.
Yes, he
But
came
we'll-
back like a son of a bitch.
Yeah,
for
he did.
Marvel.
And we'll
Yeah.
get to that in the next podcast on Marvel.
But a
So
few
let's
more.
hear about these shitbirds.
Yeah.
And by the way, I want a book, Donald McKinney's Shitbirds of Comics. All the characters that you could give a shit about. The shitbirds.
All right. Well, speaking of Marvel comics, let's mention the Black Marvel. Came out in 1941 in Mystic Comics #5. Dan Lyon's father's life was saved by Man 2 of the Blackfeet tribe. Wanting to repay the debt somehow, Dan shows up while the tribe are holding a contest for the role of the Black Marvel, hereditary hero warrior of the tribe. Dan passes the test, outdoing all of the others, and is thus given the role and responsibility to carry on their traditions and fight for justice. He has no powers, but is in superb physical condition and skilled in various Indian lore and traditions.
Oh, that's all you need.
So, you get a white guy, you put him in there, he's better than all the Indians, and then he becomes kind of their leader. Terrible. Doomed to fail. The next one, this one I actually really like.
right.
And I'm going to go on the record. I think they should bring him back. If they have any ideas on it, I would love to write him. He's called the Blue Diamond,
It's a pretty sweet name.
right?
Wait a minute. Aren't there almonds called that? Blue Diamond almonds or something like that?
Sure.
Well, I'll tell you what. You guys keep talking. I'm going to run down to the grocery store and shit. I
Yeah.
do know what you're talking about. There's
I
some
believe
company
you're
or
right.
something. Blue
Yes,
Diamond.
they have like wasabi soy sauce.
a great
almonds that are
salted
amazing.
almond and a great superhero.
Yep. He came out in 1940. Daring Mystery Comics #7, Volume 2, #1. Believe it or not. Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
Volume 2, #1 of Volume 4, previously of the volume that was also known as Daring Adventures. What?
Exactly. So on an Arctic expedition, Professor Elton Morrow finds a huge lump of rock resembling a diamond that shines blue when polished. When the ship enters the North Atlantic, it is torpedoed by a Nazi sub. Morrow jumps into the ocean with the diamond secured in a crate. The sub then fires on the survivors and destroys the crate and shatters the diamond, sending shards into Morrow's body. He's rescued, and docs are able to remove most of the shards except for a few, including one embedded too close to the base of his skull. He discovers over the time that his body has been changed. He's hard as the diamond and able to split a tree with a punch of his fist. He decides to put on a costume and fight crime as the Blue Diamond. It's actually a really cool looking costume, guys. He has a blue outfit with gold trunks, gold boots, and gold gloves, and a splash of of yellow that kind of looks like it's paint that's kind of dripping down the side of his head on the top of his head. His logo is a square diamond logo on his chest outlined by yellow. He's so cool. I highly recommend you guys look him up if you have not yet by now.
That's pretty badass.
He's pretty awesome. But anyway, getting back to it.
Yes, basically, right when his World War II is ending, and afterwards, as we discussed, superhero titles started falling out of favor, I should say. Female readers became a target audience to Martin Goodman. So he had these titles: Millie the Model, Tessie the Typist, Nellie the Nurse, and
Tessie the Typist.
Yes, Tessie the Typist.
These
After all,
could
secretaries.
Are we mentioning more shitbirds? Because I've got a bunch too.
Oh yes,
These
we
could
are.
all
Because
come back.
like I said, at this point, unfortunately, for the most part, it doesn't really get that.
You know,
much.
I just want to say with right now as we record this, Wonder Woman, it's taking female superheroes and feminism to a whole new level.
Yes.
Tessie the Typist, it's time for her to come back, right, guys?
No.
They can't.
I don't think you want to.
They can't spin that one.
I don't think you want to piss off 21st century women.
I know who you can bring back, though. Venus. In
Yes.
1948, Venus #1 premiered. The goddess Venus also happens to live and rule on the planet named after her. However, she wearies of being adored and worshipped and longs for simple love and friendship of a mortal earth woman and man. Her pining and wishing to go to Earth results in it actually happening. However, she has no powers on Earth other than being able to travel back and forth between planets. She does immediately attract the attention of many men who are instantly infatuated with her. One is Whitney Hammond, publisher of Beauty magazine, who hires her as an editor on the spot, which earns her the jealousy of Hammond's secretary, Della Mason, who is interested in both Hammond and the job herself.
Right.
She has various adventures, slowly transitioning from slight romantic comedic stories to lighthearted fantasy, and even into darker fantasy and supernatural horror. Along the way, she met up with other gods from Olympus and other pantheons such as Loki and Thor. This is all before the 1960s Don Blake Thor. So, all this stuff, very cool to see a character, a female character, appear in her own book, Venus #1, in 1948. And it sounds pretty cool.
And if I may add another female character who would later be rebranded later on in the Silver Age, Patsy Walker, who debuted in Miss America magazine #2, November 1944.
I don't like her.
You don't like the Hellcat?
No. Well, I don't like the new comic that they came out with.
Oh, I haven't
It's
read it.
awful.
It's kind of got like a cartoony art
I
to it,
vomited.
right? Yeah.
I was reading it and I puked on it. I ruined the book. I shouldn't have bought it.
Hellcat!
Yeah.
Also, Miss America, Marvel Mystery Comics #49, November 1943. Would also, I guess, be reformulated into Giant Size Avengers #1 later on in the Bronze Age.
This is all good and well, but we need to get to like a real legit hero, such as the Fighting Hobo.
Oh, yes, please, please.
This existed, guys. This existed. Timely Comics created a character called the
And-
Fighting Hobo.
Before Bum Fights came out in like 2005. or
You're
whatever
right.
it was.
Yeah, before that. In 1942, USA Comics #5, Hobo Butch Brogan is inspired by a book of Shakespeare that he has found, though he is ridiculed by the other hobos. Wah, wah.
That's bad if you're getting ridiculed by other hobos.
Yep. And here's
Hey, nice sack you got there. What's that bandana you got tied to it? It sucks. The material is shit.
it ain't even red. He rescues a dog from dog nappers.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Note, there was the promise for more adventures of Butch Brogan, the happy hobo, though this is all that the readers got, unfortunately. There's no more Fighting Hobo than 1942 USA Comics #5. A
No.
first and last appearance of the Fighting Hobo.
Now, I'm sure I could just look this up right now, but just on the question, I wonder if Fighting Hobo is like worth a lot of money just strictly because it's a Golden Age book.
Mm-hmm.
It's rare,
You need to look it up.
or if it's like 2 cents.
USA Comics number 5. It's going to be ridiculous.
USA Comics number
Yep.
5. Let's see it.
Now, here's another personal favorite of mine that I text you guys about that had me on the floor laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Flexo the Rubber Man. Mystic Comics number 1, 1940. A rubber robot, not stretching hero.
What? He doesn't stretch?
Yeah, it's very strange.
Flexo the Rubber Man doesn't stretch. Okay.
That's not cool.
Fair
That's
enough.
a ripoff.
What about the Wizard? He doesn't even pee.
Yeah, that's true.
But he does run fast.
Now, Jap Buster Johnson, that's another one I kind of... That's
Lord have mercy.
That's another one.
Oh,
That's
he's gonna
another
get us
one.
kicked off the air.
Well, that's the one that disturbed me the most, to be honest with you. When I was going through the list, I said, but then again, it was the times of World War II.
Right.
Unfortunately, Japanese Americans were being interned in camps.
Into what?
In camps. They're being interned in camps, prison camps.
Oh, you
essentially.
mean, wait, in the United States?
Yes, sir.
Prison camps for people that
President
Wasn't George Takei?
his parents, I think.
Yeah.
His parents.
And he might have been a child. I don't know.
I
But
think if I'm correct, yeah, he remembers that and he
Yeah.
talks about that.
yeah,
Crazy.
Still people to this day that can remember that.
Here's another one in the opposite direction. Fighting Yank. Captain
Oh.
America Comics number 17.
Fighting yank me off.
Yeah.
And Captain America just stole his thunder, I bet.
Flash Foster. That one doesn't sound right.
I got one.
What you got? What you got?
I got one right here. Jack Frost, 1941 USA Comics number 1. Before the Fighting Hobo came out in USA Comics number 5.
By the way, real quick, I just found a CGC on eBay, USA Comics number 5. You could get it. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's free shipping, guys.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay.
It's a 6.0,
All right.
Wow.
$3,600.
Sold. Kevin, can I borrow $5,000?
If I cash out some stock, sure, I can hook you up.
Yes.
I love too. It doesn't. Man, the hobo gets no respect because it doesn't even say it's his first appearance. Which CGC does that. Did you notice that? Have you noticed that? CGC doesn't put first appearances sometimes of characters when it is their first appearance in a book.
Really? You
No,
don't
I've never
say?
noticed that.
Sometimes like an obscure character.
They don't do me dirty like that.
No,
Ah,
no. Sometimes like I just think they didn't know, or they think the character's not
worthy.
enough.
Yeah.
But this one says Hitler, Mussolini, and Tojo cover. Origin, American Avenger, and Rocco. Victory Boys cover. And a Hitler story.
Yay.
Gotta pick that up. 3,600. Wow.
Also, this title sounds kind of gruesome. Archie the Gruesome, but yet he's in Comedy Comics number 10. So this is probably also during that time that they started transitioning to other genres after superheroes.
But Jack Frost, damn it.
Was it Jack Frost, like the mythical Jack Frost?
In the first issue, Jack is residing somewhere in the frozen north near enough to the wilds of Alaska for man to reach him, the first he's seen in centuries. Now that man and his crime is able to encroach on his domain, he ventures to civilization to help stamp out crime. In addition to creating icicles and having a freezing body and touch, he can also blow a strong cold wind that can throw a grown man across the room. He's called...
Grown man. Not just little kids.
No, grown man.
Grown men.
He's called the King of Cold, as well as the Lord of the Storm.
Oh my
Now
God.
that sounds like something for Riverdance right there. The Lord of the Storm.
Lord of the Storm.
He can also turn invisible when he needs to. I don't get that one, but okay, that works for me.
Can't see me, I'm cold guy. What?
Yeah, apparently when you get so cold, you turn invisible.
I just like that he
That's not
instantly
cool.
started fighting crime and went to civilization because people were encroaching on his shit.
Yeah.
This was a nice area that I was living in and nobody was bothering me, and now I have to go fight crime.
Guys, I've got more.
Oh, please. Bring
The-
it. Bring it.
The Fourth Musketeer.
The
Yeah. In 1942, Comedy Comics number 10, The Fourth Musketeer is a ghost who returns from the dead to fight the Germans. Recognizing that he cannot free France by himself, he rides to America on a white horse. Yes, a ghost. To fight criminals and Nazi sympathizers.
Oh, that's
Yes, that happened. Another one is The Red Raven.
Ooh.
That appeared in, you'll love this one, Red Raven Comics number 1. How about that?
And that's what I was saying. Then the Human Torch took over for Red Raven comic. It just became Human Torch with number 2.
Yeah, crazy.
So there's no one.
And we'll realize why Red Raven disappeared. The boy who would become the Red Raven is the sole survivor of a plane crash into a floating island inhabited by a race of birdmen.
Oh, naturally.
They raise him, and when he's an adult, give him a pair of artificial bat wings and send him back to the land of his birth, where he uses his power of flight and knowledge of advanced science to fight crime.
Oh, nice. All
Yeah.
natural. All
Yeah.
normal.
You know, they have other couple of characters, but I don't know if they ever met up. Sun Girl and Moon Man.
Oh, I've got Moon Man here.
Oh, you got Moon Man.
Yeah, Mystic Comics #5.
Yes.
Moon Man is a Batman-stylized hero. He's wealthy, a master of various sciences, lives in a penthouse apartment, and puts on a costume of the night to frighten the wicked and fight crime. He roughs up those that he feels that deserve it, and his published case has him going up against Boss Magul, poisoner of children.
Wow.
Hey, it's old Boss Magul. No, that's whatever. Poisoner of children.
You know, they had to
Oh
attack
my
that.
god, that guy's horrible.
He's in peak condition and a good fighter. Yes, that's pretty much it. That's Moon Man.
Well, don't forget too, they were also really trying to cash in on the characters that were a hit, so they created Namora, not Namor, Namora. And she was she was from Atlantis and the daughter of an Atlantean father and human mother, very much like Submariner. And she's the cousin of Namor the Submariner. So it's kind of like
Supergirl.
yeah, or also like Different Strokes when they added the little Sam kid later on with the red
Oh,
hair.
yeah, the red hair. I remember.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I forgot about him.
Yeah. She first appeared in Marvel Mystery Comics #82 and was created by Ken Bald. I hope he was bald. And Sid Shores. She had her own comic book series, Namora, which ran from August through December 1948, so not a long run. While this title lasted only 3 issues, she regularly appeared with Namor in Marvel Mystery Comics and also in Submariner until that series ended in the mid-1950s. She was not seen again until the Silver Age.
Waka waka.
So yeah, she was much like those like, you know, when they what was Brady Bunch? They added the cousin kid. She was that distant cousin who came in to try and put some pep back into their step, and it just didn't fucking fly.
You know what? We forgot to mention Carl Burgos, who's the creator of the Human Torch, but he also created his sidekick. We forgot about Little Toro. We can't forget about him.
We mentioned it, but you know, I just
You like Little
all
Toro?
right, Toro.
Toro,
Toro
exists.
wasn't an android too, wasn't he? He was actually like a little boy with flame power. I think
Toro's a thing.
I think they
No pun intended.
I think they even reimagined him later on as a mutant Toro or an Inhuman. I don't know.
That would make sense. That's
he-
weird though.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the little sidekick, and I believe they rightfully killed him.
But guys, let's talk about. We've already talked about the fighting hobo. Let's talk about the vagabond.
Oh,
The old
please,
vagabond.
break him down to me.
The Vagabond in 1941, USA Comics #2.
Okay.
The Vagabond cuts a ridiculous figure, looking pretty much like an out-of-work clown with the unwieldy name of Chauncey Throttlebottom III.
Throttlebottom the Third.
I'm not kidding, Chauncey Throttlebottom III.
Wow.
He proves to be a whirlwind of a fighter and detective because in reality, he's a man called Murphy, who works along with Kelly and Grogan as investigators for the crusading DA's office. Murphy adopts the disguise to throw crooks off kilter, and the fact his own face is recognizable.
See, this is what you get for disrespecting Simon and Kirby. It comes down to this.
Yeah, you get Detective Mike Trapp. In 1943, Captain America Comics #31. He's a homicide police detective with a youthful sidekick in Pepper Burns.
Wow.
I think somebody had some crabs at the time. Sidekick and Pepper Burns solved many mysteries in Let's Play Detective feature that ran in several of the books.
Nice.
So it was kind of a nice Let's Play Detective, guys, type thing. Also leads us to one more I have for us, Purple Mask. 1940, Daring Mystery Comics #3. Assistant DA Dennis Burton puts on a purple mask and costume to fight crime. Much like the Laughing Mask, he has his own scientific laboratory, though he keeps it a secret, and he carries a pair of guns which he is able to use to deadly effect. However, he does seem to be a tad more willing to take criminals alive if possible. Dennis Burton seems to be friends with Police Commissioner Herrick, and that's pretty much it about
Well,
the Purple
Dennis
Mask.
Burton also, a lot of people don't know, but his great-grandson would become Jack Burton. Big Trouble in Little China.
What?
Nice.
No, but that's
You
how
know
I just
what old
imagined
Jack
it.
Burton says in a time like this.
It's all in the reflexes.
Reflexes are timely.
It's funny you're looking at Timely. Speaking of Timely comics, but I'm looking here at the Human Torch with the Toro like covers.
Mhm.
Literally, it's just 2 flaming red guys, except one's a little smaller. So you can kind of see why Toro didn't take so well. I mean, he was there
Yeah.
as a sidekick, but it was like, which
Toro,
fireball is
Toro.
who?
I do want to take the time real quick to enter in one more guy.
Sure.
This is my last crazy character.
Hey, give him the respect. One more shitbird.
One more shitbird, you ready? And the only reason why he pops up is because there was a comic called The 12 that came out not too long ago.
I'm glad you brought that up.
In which case, they brought a lot of these timely characters back. I believe 12 of them.
Yes, sir.
And they were all ridiculous. But you know what? I read the first half of it before it got like on hiatus while
Right.
they caught up and did more. And from what I read, I actually very much enjoy.
Right.
The Blue Blade is the guy I'm going to discuss. He looks like a crazy musketeer with a gap in his teeth. He's like Earl Flynn up to 11. He is a fictional character appearing in American comic books published by Marvel, created by an unknown writer and unknown artist. Only appearance was in USA Comics number 5 by Marvel forerunner Timely Comics. After the 1940s, it disappeared into obscurity until 2007, where he reappeared in the limited series The 12. Little is known about the origin of the Blue Blade. Although he has no powers, he still fought alongside the Invaders and many other heroes against the Nazis. He is described by the 12 artist Chris Weston as Errol Flynn, of course, as I said, turned up to 11, and the guy who was definitely wearing eyeliner. The Phantom Reporter describes him as Roy Chambers, the Blue Blade. He was among the 12 who entered a Nazi base and was trapped and put into suspended animation. However, after the defeat of Hitler, he and the others weren't discovered until August 2nd, 2008, 60 years later. The U.S. government woke them and tried to conceal the fact that they had been asleep for decades, going so far as to mock up newspapers and buildings to give the impression that only a few days had passed. Crazy,
Interesting.
right?
Now, I'm looking at something real quick that I thought was really interesting, too, because now I'm all hooked on Toro. Now I'm Toro's #1 fan. So Robin was created in 1940 as the first sidekick to Batman.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Toro was also created in 1940, and now get a load of his origin is actually kind of interesting. They're strangely similar. Obviously, one took off and had some more staying power. Thomas Raymond, that was Toro, was born in New York City to parents who were laboratory assistants to Phineas Horton, creator of the original Human Torch. After their employment with Horton had ended, they were killed in a train derailment. Toro himself was found at the site of the accident by, of course, a traveling circus. Completely unscathed despite the blaze from the wreckage ranging around him. Adopted by the circus, his complete immunity to flame was used to draw additional crowds to the circus sideshow. He would eventually meets the Human Torch and becomes a sidekick. I just like the circus aspect with the sidekicks and the orphan thing. Exactly the same thing with Robin. Except we got a kid with fire, boy wonder.
Very interesting.
Interesting. But I think with our Timely Comics talk, it's kind of time to wrap it up almost. Yeah? Or what do we got?
I suppose so. And just for fun, let me throw a couple more weird
Little more
characters out there.
tidbits.
There's a character called Slow Motion Jones.
Oh, that guy was a keeper.
And another one called Taxi Taylor.
Oh
Taxi
my god.
Taylor.
Sounds like Space Cabbie. Which is a character from DC Comics.
Indeed.
Yep.
Well, like I said before, what would later become Marvel paid a price by disrespecting Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, and this is what led to some of these really bizarre and just characters that didn't even last like 2 issues in some cases.
Well, literally, like we said, just throwing anything out
Throwing
there.
anything,
seeing what stuck.
see what stuck.
Which honestly, I'm very thankful because we wouldn't have had a lot of DC characters that we have now.
That's true.
And we wouldn't have all this gold of ridiculous shitbirds from Timely.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, this is great. This is my bread and butter right here, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know what? We may have to go on eBay after the podcast and start trying to track some of these books down.
Well, yeah, they're already in the thousands.
We'll use your child's college fund to...
Already did.
Oh.
It's gone.
Oh.
Sorry, guys.
Well, there we go.
It's gone.
Damn. Okay, well, with that, thank you guys for listening. We're going to be back for another part here soon. Please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Face page, MySpace. We don't have a MySpace
Insta page.
Subscribe to our
Instagram.
YouTube channel. Let your friends know.
iTunes subscription,
Yeah,
please.
if you can't listen to it, some people I know, they're like, I can't listen to it on my iPad thing or my iTunes and all that stuff. I go, so just go to YouTube. You can listen to it there.
Yep, we're
Same
right
stuff.
on there.
And with that, we'll see you at the comic shop.
This has been The Real Short Box. We'll see you at the comic shop. Thanks for listening.